In the harsh, unforgiving wilderness of Australia, there are many stories that we've tried to forget. Stories of animals hunted to the brink of oblivion, seen as threats, eradicated in the name of progress. The thylacine, the wedge-tailed eagle, and now the dingo. The thylacine is extinct. The wedge-tailed eagle populations are slowly recovering, but the dingo is still caught in the crosshairs of history's mistakes. The same mistakes that led to the extinction of the thylacine, the near destruction of the wedge-tailed eagle, and now the dingo is on that very same path. What we failed to understand then, we're repeating now. A bounty system that wiped out species before is being revived under the guise of protection, and this time, it could be too late. The dingo's fate is sealed in the same ink that wrote the death sentence for the thylacine. The question is, are we willing to watch it happen all over again? We've pushed them to the edge once before, and if we don't act now, the dingo could follow the thylacine into history's darkest corners, and this time there will be no coming back. For centuries, these predators roamed freely across the continent, playing an important role in the ecosystem by controlling populations of smaller mammals. But in the 1800s, as European colonisers expanded into the outback, conflict began to rise. As farmers tried to protect their livestock, dingoes were vilified as a threat. In response, various Australian states enacted a bounty system, rewarding anyone who could bring in the carcass of a dead dingo. The government's official stance was that the dingo was a pest. But the bounty system didn't just target dingoes, it was a broader policy that failed to consider the ecological consequences of eradicating a species that had lived on the land for thousands of years. By the early 20th century, the dingo bounty was widespread. The damage done to the dingo population is profound, and the repercussions are still felt today. By the 1980s, the dingo had been driven out of large parts of its former range, and its role as a top-order predator was replaced by invasive species, like cats and foxes, which further altered the delicate balance of the ecosystem. In states like New South Wales, Queensland, and Western Australia, the dingo bounty has been resurrected in the name of livestock protection. Farmers claim that dingoes continue to be a threat to sheep and cattle, and so the hunt goes on. But this time it's not just about survival, it's all about money. For each dingo scalp turned in, hunters can earn anywhere from $10 to $100, depending on the region and the specific program. It may not seem like much, but when the bounty is tied to the mass killing of these animals, the costs pile up, and so too does the body count. Each year, hundreds of scalps are turned in. In 2020 alone, Queensland reported more than 1,000 dingoes killed under the bounty system. The numbers vary from state to state, but the pattern is clear. This is no small-scale operation. Government programs incentivise the killing of dingoes, rewarding hunters for bringing in more carcasses. But while farmers claim it's necessary to protect their herds, they often fail to consider the bigger picture. For each dingo eliminated, the balance of the ecosystem shifts, and the consequences ripple through the land. With each scalp turned in, the dingo's presence in the outback becomes even more tenuous. They're not just victims of fear and misunderstanding, they are victims of a system that fails to acknowledge the damage it's doing to the environment. And this is where it gets dangerous, for the dingo is not just a predator, it's an essential part of the ecosystem, keeping populations of small mammals and invasive species in check. Remove the dingo and you invite the very problems that farmers claim to fear: rising numbers of pests, damage to crops, and complete collapse of the natural balance. But the dingo isn't the only species to fall victim to a government-sponsored bounty system. In the 19th and the early 20th century, the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, faced a similar fate. Much like the dingo, the thylacine was seen as a threat to livestock. Farmers feared that the marsupial would attack their sheep, and in 1888, a bounty was placed on the thylacine's head. Over the decades, thylacines were hunted relentlessly and were driven to extinction. The last known thylacine died in captivity in 1936, but the impact of the bounty system lingered long after. And the story doesn't end with the dingo and the thylacine. The wedge-tailed eagle, Australia's largest bird of prey, was also subject to a bounty in the 19th and early 20th century. Much like the dingo, these majestic creatures were targeted because of their supposed threat to livestock. Wedge-tailed eagles were seen as dangerous predators, their powerful talons and keen hunting instincts making them a target for hunters. Farmers believed that the eagles would prey on young sheep or lambs, and so a bounty was set for anyone who could bring in an eagle's carcass. Like the dingo and the thylacine, the wedge-tailed eagle was decimated by the bounty system. The bird's population suffered significantly, and although the bounty was eventually phased out, the scars left on the species are still visible today. The story of these species serves as a powerful reminder of the harm caused by indiscriminate bounty systems. While the bounties were once justified by the belief that they could protect human interests, we now see that they've contributed to the decline of some of Australia's most iconic and unique animals. The lessons learned from the past have sparked important conversations about how we approach wildlife management today. Through awareness and concentrated conservation efforts, we have a chance to undo some of the damage and ensure a future where these remarkable creatures can thrive once again. The stories of the dingo, thylacine and wedge-tailed eagle should serve as a chilling warning. History has shown us what can happen when we allow fear and misunderstanding to dictate our actions. The thylacine, hunted to extinction by bounties, is gone forever. And while the wedge-tailed eagle is slowly recovering, it's far from safe. Now, the dingo stands on the precipice of the same tragic path. If we don't act now, we could lose the dingo just as we've lost the thylacine. Forever. In truth, the dingo's role as a top predator is irreplaceable. Without it, the land is left vulnerable to the damage caused by these invasive species, foxes, feral cats and rabbits, that thrive in the absence of natural predators. This is the irony. By killing dingoes, we only create more problems down the line. The bounty on dingoes may sound like a solution to an immediate problem, but as history has shown, it's a short-term fix that doesn't account for long-term consequences. The dingo may be the target now, but its fate could be sealed by the same ignorance that drove the thylacine to extinction. If we don't change the way that we view the dingo and how we manage our ecosystems, there may come a day where the only place you'll find a dingo is in a history book.